Now the moment that we have all been anticipating has arrived. Many of you may be familiar with Dr. Khawaja's remarkable community service and charitable spirit. He's a founding member of the Islamic Arts Society. He's recently published his autobiography entitled The Boy Refugee, a memoir from a long-forgotten war, and it recounts the tale of a young refugee boy in the aftermath of the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. This poignant story depicts his escape from war-torn Bangladesh to a relatively safe barbed wire internment camp in the foothills of the Himalayas. His day-to-day life as a civilian prisoner of war, his 2-year-long journey spanning thousands of miles back to Pakistan. Please help me welcome Dr. Gala.
Thank you, Gala, for the introduction. It's my honor to be here, lighting the way for refugees with Amaanah. Thank you for the introduction. And yes, as I am a surgeon, a colorectal surgeon, and recent past chief of medical staff at the Methodist Global Hospital. I am an author. My book is available in Barnes & Noble and Amazon. I am an artist in my spare time. If you've ever been to the Champions Masjid or to some other facilities in town, you will see some of my large-scale murals. And yes, I am also the founder of the Islamic Arts Society, and many of you might know this is the largest festival of Islamic arts in America. And most importantly, I am a husband, a father, and grandfather of these 2 wonderful kids. But yes, once I was a refugee too. When I was 8 years old, we went into a refugee camp, and I stayed there for 2 years until I was 10 years old. So in order to give you a background, I'm going to give you a little lesson in history. So after this wonderful iftar and a sumptuous dinner and a generous helping of this dessert, who's ready for a boring lecture in history? Are you ready? All right, let's talk about history. When the British left the subcontinent in 1947, they divided the Indian subcontinent into 2 countries. Based upon the Muslim areas were called Pakistan, and the areas with the Hindu majority were Hindustan or India. Wonderful idea. Except that the 2 parts with Muslim majority were located 1,000 miles away from each other, with land in between. Now, if there was water in between, these were 2 islands, one could see the amalgamation. But for some, this was an unnatural marriage. How could we have a country, never happened in history, that was separated by 1,000 miles of land in between? So of course there were differences in the people. The language was different. Yes, Islam was the common thread, but the language was different, the cultures were different. The way they thought was different, the way they thought that different. Their food was different, their music was different. So after a while, differences of opinion grew and people started kind of fighting each other. Now that led to skirmishes, strikes, infightings, a lot of people got killed, and eventually it culminated in a civil war that finally ended in the 1971 war between India and Pakistan. Now, how many of you remember or were born already at that time? By show of hands? Not many people like my age, okay? They're all youngsters here. So the story goes that when the war happened, the Indian forces won the war, and a new country was born. East Pakistan ceased to exist. West Pakistan became Pakistan. East Pakistan became somehow we survived. When the war ended, a few days, 13 days later, Bangladesh got independence, and we, the people of Urdu-speaking origins, suddenly became refugees in our own. Now this refugee status was given to all the people who were non-Bengali speaking, and they may have lived in this territory for generations, and some of them, most of them actually spoke fluent Bengali, but we were still outsiders and we were persona non grata. So just a moment to pause and see who are the refugees in this world. Well, refugee, you're not born as a refugee. This is not an ethnicity, this is not a race. You're a normal people, just like you and me. Just imagine you and me living a normal life. Somebody doesn't like us, say, hey, your color is different, your race is different, your ethnicity is different. Get out of your house. And that is the ultimate injustice in this world, that you could be an educator, you could be a scientist, you could be a doctor or an engineer. Suddenly, one day, someone decides you do not belong here. And that, unfortunately, is the great injustice in this world. Today, we have 77 million refugees in this world. 77 million. Can you imagine that? The largest number of refugees in the history of mankind today. So now that we became refugees, what happens next? When the war ended, there were millions of people who became homeless. Another few 100,000 people died. And suddenly 300,000 people became refugees. We were all Urdu-speaking people who were not from Bangladeshi origin, and now we were refugees in our own homeland. So what do we do with such a large number of people? 300 to 400,000 people? What do we do with them? They are no longer welcome here. Well, the Indian government, which was the victorious side, had a brilliant idea. They said, why don't we take all these refugees from East Pakistan and transfer them across the land 1,000 miles away to West Pakistan? Well, a great idea, but the numbers are too large. The numbers are too large. And then the other problem was both the Indian and Pakistani governments were not talking with each other. They had just fought a war. There was no communication between the two. So there was no way they could have negotiated the transfer of such a large number of people. But the Indians also had to extract these people out of Bangladesh because the local population was very much against this Bihari-speaking or Urdu-speaking people, especially the army. There were almost 90,000 army people and they would have been killed. But here's the thing, the Indians were the victors, and by Geneva Conventions, they were obligated to protect the fighting troops. So they were fighting the war 3 days ago, and today they have to protect these Pakistani troops, according to Geneva Conventions. So they started gathering. They went all around Bangladesh and started gathering people. Mostly it was the army people, and my family was lucky that we were actually selected or became part of that group. So the Indians took 93,000 people and they started transferring us across land to West Pakistan. They put us in trucks like this, a boat like this, which is called a rocket boat, and then in train. The train journey was an amazing, terrible, terrible train journey. They had boarded the windows so that we could not escape. They put like almost 150 people in a carriage that took only 40 people. So there was not enough space to walk, there was not enough space to roam around or lay down or get rest. Forget about sanitation and food. So for 7 days and 7 nights, the train chugged along and we were trapped inside the train. Finally, we arrived in the outskirts of a city called Roorkee, where we disembarked and we were put in camps. Now these camps were actually old Indian army barracks, and they surrounded the barracks with a rope of barbed wire fence, and then surrounded that with another row of barbed wire fence, and armed Indian soldiers patrolled day and night with their machine guns and watchdogs to make sure that none of the prisoners escaped. We spent 2 years there in a barbed wire cage, which was actually called a cage. So my cage was cage number 2 in camp number 32 in Roorkee, Saharanpur district of India. They made almost 100, more than 100 camps around. So these camps were basically, they were large, the barracks were large halls, and they put about 50 family in each of these halls, in each of these barracks. And they gave us a floor space. My home for the 2 years was a piece of about this big, 6 by 8 foot. We put our bed sheet there, and my family, my brother, sister, and mother, father, we all sat there, we slept there, we ate there. Because we were eating there were breadcrumbs and cockroaches and mosquitoes and mice, all kinds of insects and rodents were roaming around when we slept. So those were the conditions. Food was scarce, malnutrition was common, clothing was not enough, so in winters we were really shivering. Taking a shower was a luxury that we had once a week. So this is the condition, this is the terrible condition that we lived in for almost 2 years. While we were languishing in the camps, it seemed like the entire world has forgotten about it. The governments of India and Pakistan were doing what governments do, that is procrastinating, just waiting, talking, and then renegotiating. And it really was a very terrible situation, and that is what the refugees' mind, it's so terrible for the refugees. Just not knowing what to do next, what's going to happen next. Of course, in those days there was no newspaper, there was no radio, nothing in the camp, so we really didn't have any news of the outside world. We really did not know. There were few transistors. But that was the situation, unfortunately, and for 2 years we languished in there until finally the governments agreed and we were put in train once again, and this time it was a happy train ride, and we went across to West Pakistan where we were delivered. When we arrived in West Pakistan, my family decided to move to the city of Karachi. That is where we had most of our family and relatives, so we could get support. Now, you would think that the ordeal has ended, but as you heard from many people tonight, it was the resettlement that was perhaps one of the most difficult issues. In those days, we did not have, thanks to Gala, these refugee resettlement organizations that actually helped intake of the new refugees. So food was a problem, shelter was a problem. I remember that we were taken in by some kind-hearted relatives. We lived there with them for a few months each and then moved on to another. How much can you live or cause inconvenience to a relative? We lived with 3 months with somebody, moved to another family. Another kind-hearted family took us, we moved to another family. In one instance, the gentleman in his 50s who was supporting us, we were staying with him, he suddenly passed away from an MI. So he was a sole breadwinner, how could we inconvenience his family? So we went to another kind-hearted relative. So on and so forth. Food was a big issue. I remember my mother using, she had learned this in the camp, she was saving leftover tortillas and she would put them in water and salt and make a tortilla soup. She she would cook onions and fry them and put water and put flour in it and make gravy, and we make that with roti. So that is how we lived once my father got a job. So we lived with our relatives for a year or so. Then my father got a job. It was difficult for him to find a job. Once my father found a job, we moved into our own house, and that is where the problem with the food came, and we used to get the tortilla soups every night. So that was the situation, that we did not have anybody to support when we went there. The next problem was connectivity. When you are in a refugee, when you are in a new place, you don't know where to go for your electricity bill, where to go for a school. A kind-hearted relative worked in a school, and he got us admitted in a school, and we got our education. Now, during these entire difficult times, my mother continued to put emphasis on education, and she made sure that all of us got educated. So she made sure, she told my sister that you'll become a master's in home economics, and she did. She told my brother that you'll become an engineer, and he did his master's in structural engineering from Berkeley University, California. And she told me that you better become a doctor, and I did. So that's the mother's persuasion. But I'm so grateful for her. Time went by. Life is like a long journey. I arrived in Houston. You know, people come and sit to you in the train, then they leave. And then you stop at different stations, and then you move on. So life moves on. I arrived in Houston in 2005, and in 2020, I published my book. The book is available in Amazon, and there are some copies outside as well if you are interested. When I wrote my book, I dedicated it to UNHCR and to Amaanah. UNHCR, because they are the frontline people, they are there and they receive the refugee in the war. They are doing a fantastic job, and I'm all for supporting them. Amaanah is here in our home. And by all means, I'm all for supporting UNHCR, but the after-dinner talks that we do, us Desi people, solving world's problem in our after-dinner discussions like this, especially after the third helping of biryani, we are solving the problems of Rohingya and Syria. And God forbid, if we have an intoxicating cup of chai, we would almost devise plans to bring Imran Khan back in power. So these are the loose talk that I'm totally anti-discussion. You know, I hate it when middle-aged uncles, Desi uncles like me get together after dinner. This is all we talk about. What's happening in Rohingya, what's happening in Chechnya, and whatever. So, fine. If you know a senator or you know a congresswoman, like Sheila Jackson was here, if you have connections with a think tank, yes, talk to them personally on a one-to-one basis and try to influence their opinion, but not after dinner discussions. Please, let's not do that. Because we are forgetting the refugee that is right here in our town, in our city, and we need to help Amaanah, help these people, because this is our town, our people, they are right here. Let's stop talking about all of that, okay? Let's focus here. So what does Amaanah do? The first story I heard about Amaanah was a group of school, university, U of A students taking grocery bags to refugee families in third ward. Yes, that is what we heard. That is what we heard. And I said, what kind of students are these? This must be amazing. We heard about them doing maths with those children in their homes. And now you see Amaanah has a partnership with HISD. Amazing growth. Amazing. That's Amaanah helps with food, with shelter, connectivity. You know, when refugees family come to a new place, they don't know where to get their driver's license, how to get health care, how to get a bank account. They don't speak English, so how can they get a bank account? So this is what Amaanah is doing. My son Ahad actually worked with Amaanah a few months ago, and they were helping the refugee families go to their medical appointments. So important. They don't know how to get to the medical appointment. So, in the end, thank you very much for your attention. I am so happy that, between the cups of, the drinks and the khajur and all the dessert, you still paid attention to me. I really appreciate that. The next question is, why do we want to support Amaanah? Why do we want to help Amaanah light the way for these refugee families? Because we want Amaanah to help educate them, the opportunity that I didn't have except for the assistance of my mother. We want Amaanah to help with their food and shelter and education. So when you donate tonight, I want you to donate and do it with the conviction that you know that one day this young man or woman, through your help to Amaanah, will become an outstanding citizen in America. I want you to donate with the conviction that one day with your support, this young man or woman, through your generous help to Amaanah, may become a doctor or an engineer or an educator, an honorable person in this society. And I want you to donate with the conviction that one day that young child or man or woman would be standing here in front of you, delivering a keynote speech through the help of societies like Amaanah. So please donate to Amaanah. Please donate generously to Amaanah. And please donate more than what you had intended to donate initially for Amaanah tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Khawaja. So he did my job, board members. He asked for the money, and he did an amazing job, so you might want to post him for the next CEO role if we don't give it to Khalid. Because we don't, so Khalid, many of you were not in this room, so we had an event last year, and Khalid was speaking, and he said a part of his journey was going to be getting his degree, getting his business background, and then going to be the CEO of Amaanah. So now I told him I have to rethink giving him a scholarship next year, because now I got to look out for my job. But Dr. Khawaja, before you step down, I'd like to award you some flowers.
Thank you.